On Christmas Eve in 1945, a two-story wooden home in West Virginia caught fire. 5 children were trapped inside. The house burned for exactly 45 minutes before collapsing into the dark, ash-filled basement. But when investigators searched the ashes the next morning, they found absolutely 0 human remains. The home belonged to George and Jenny Sauter. They were Italian immigrants who had built a prosperous life in the small town of Fayetteville. George ran a highly successful coal hauling firm, supporting their large family of 10 children. Around 1:30 a.m., Jenny woke to the smell of smoke. She managed to escape into the freezing air with George and 4 of their children. The remaining 5 siblings were still asleep in the attic bedrooms. George rushed to perform a rescue, but he immediately hit a wall of highly specific obstacles. His heavy maintenance ladder was missing from its usual spot against the house. When he tried to throw water on the flames, he found the rain barrel frozen solid. He tried to start his 2 commercial coal trucks to use them as a makeshift ladder, but neither engine would turn over, despite running perfectly the day before. The local fire department was only 2.5 miles down the road, but they took 7 hours to arrive, largely because multiple emergency calls to the local telephone operator went completely unanswered. A missing ladder, disabled commercial trucks, and a silent switchboard all occurred simultaneously. Together, these precise mechanical and systemic failures turned a survivable house fire into a highly effective, inescapable trap. When Fire Chief F.J. Morris finally arrived at 8 a.m., he conducted a brief 2-hour search of the smoking basement. He found 0 bones, but immediately told the parents that the intense heat must have completely cremated their children. Following the chief's lead, the local coroner held a quick inquest. He ruled the fire an accident caused by faulty wiring, and the state issued 5 death certificates attributing the cause to fire or suffocation. In the immediate aftermath, the family was paralyzed by grief. But as the smoke cleared, George and Jenny realized the official explanation required them to believe something physically impossible. Accepting the coroner's report required the town to ignore fundamental thermodynamic science. It prioritized a convenient, localized explanation over the physical reality of the fire. The physical evidence contradicts the coroner's conclusion almost immediately. Witnesses and surviving family members confirmed that the downstairs lamps and exterior Christmas lights stayed on well after the fire started. If the blaze originated from a short circuit inside the walls, the power would have cut immediately. A telephone repairman investigating the property later found that the house's communication line hadn't melted in the heat. It had been cleanly severed with a professional tool, exactly 14 feet up the utility pole. A few months later, the youngest Sauter daughter found a dark green, military-grade incendiary device, a pineapple bomb, hidden in the brush near the house. This perfectly matched a passing bus driver's report of seeing individuals throwing balls of fire onto the roof early that morning. This animated chart compares the thermal realities of the Sauter fire against a commercial crematorium. A standard house fire reaches about 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and the Sauter house burned for just 45 minutes. A commercial crematorium requires temperatures up to 2,000 degrees for 2 straight hours just to process a single body. And even under those extreme, sustained conditions, heavy human bones like skulls and femurs survive intact and have to be mechanically pulverized. Yet the Sauter fire supposedly vaporized 5 skeletons while leaving delicate paper dictionaries and metal appliance frames completely recognizable in the ash. Working electrical circuits, cleanly severed phone lines, and surviving household items dismantle the idea of an accidental electrical short.
The evidence points directly to a coordinated, premeditated attack on the home. Frustrated by local authorities, George hired a private pathologist in 1949 to systematically excavate the basement. They found just 4 small pieces of bone, a set of human lumbar vertebrae. The bones were sent to the Smithsonian Institution for analysis. The senior anthropologist there confirmed the vertebrae belonged to an individual older than any of the missing children, and most importantly, showed 0 signs of thermal damage. The experts concluded the bones had never been inside the burning house. They were almost certainly introduced to the site in the loads of cemetery dirt George had recently purchased to fill the basement for a memorial garden. But the most disturbing discovery involved Fire Chief Morris. A local minister revealed that Morris had secretly buried a fresh piece of beef liver in the ashes on Christmas morning, housed in a metal dynamite box.
He later confessed he hoped the family would find it, mistake it for human remains, and stop asking questions. Planting fake organs and ignoring forensic impossibilities demonstrates that local officials were actively shielding whoever had orchestrated the crime. If the children didn't die in the fire, their bodies weren't in the ashes because they were already gone. The blaze was engineered to isolate the parents and destroy the physical evidence, acting as a noisy distraction for a quiet extraction. George Hodder was highly opinionated and openly criticized Benito Mussolini. In 1945, this anti-fascist rhetoric deeply offended a conservative, pro-Mussolini faction operating within the region's Italian immigrant community. Weeks before the fire, an insurance salesman visited the property. When George declined to buy a policy, the salesman became enraged, warning George that his house would burn and his children would be destroyed as direct retribution for his political comments. That same salesman later served on the coroner's jury that ruled the fire an accident. The morning after the fire, the manager of a roadside motel 50 miles away reported seeing the children. A week later, a woman at a Charleston hotel stated she saw 4 of the kids checking in at midnight, accompanied by 2 men and 2 women speaking rapid Italian, who hostilely blocked her from talking to them. Ideological revenge provides a clear motive, while the immigrant network provides the logistics. The perpetrators had the local influence to threaten George, the tactical skills to disable his home, and the organized reach to move 5 children across state lines undetected. In 1968, 23 years after the fire, Jenny received an envelope postmarked from Kentucky. Inside was a photo of a young man in his mid-20s. He shared the exact facial structure and distinctive left eyebrow of Louis Sauter, who was 9 when he vanished. On the back of the photo, a handwritten message included the zip code 90132, a specific postal routing code for Palermo, Sicily. The Sauters hired a private investigator to travel to Kentucky and track the sender, but after receiving his retainer, the investigator vanished and was never heard from again. The family spent the rest of their lives searching. They erected a massive billboard on Route 16 featuring photos of the missing children and offering a reward, a local landmark that stood in the community for nearly 40 years. George passed away in 1969, and Jenny wore black in perpetual mourning until her death 20 years later. They went to their graves without knowing what really happened on that Christmas Eve. The physical evidence strongly suggests the 5 Sauter children were abducted and survived into adulthood. But if that is true, it leaves behind a chilling reality. The threat against them was so profound, and the network holding them so powerful, that not a single one of them ever dared to contact their parents again.